I'm Shauna Williams, and I'm 100% certain that I was sexually assaulted at the age of 17. I am a professor of psychology at College of the Canyons and Moorpark College. I am also a co-founder of Wake Up Stand Up. So in order to talk about my first experience with sexual assault, I have to kind of give you a little bit of backstory, because there's part of that backstory that's where you can really see the impact of a statement that's made later on by my assailant. So I was high school senior, 17. So I had been dating this guy off and on, who was actually my first love, my high school crush from freshman year on, but he was much older. He had already graduated, and he was in the military. Flash forward to my senior year in high school, I had decided this Christmas, when he was going to come home for leave, I decided I wanted to lose my virginity. So I had gone to my mom, had a whole conversation about it, healthy way to do this, be protected, all that kind of stuff. Took me to the doctor, got all that done. All right, so he comes home. I had intercourse with him, which was not great. But anyways, so that happened, and then a week later, I received a phone call from his wife. Unbeknownst to me, he had gotten married, and I lost my virginity to a person that was married, who had been my high school sweetheart for 4 years. So my heart was broken. Like that's an understatement to say that my heart was broken. It was broken into several pieces. Crushed and broken, move into the next year, dealing with college applications and all of those things that come with senior year, the end of your senior year, and I meet this other guy at a track meet. And, everybody on the track team wanted this guy. I went to a different school. He was gorgeous. He was blah, 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 whatever. I, lucky one, end up with him. I had a conversation with him very early on that I did not want to, and this was during a messing around session. I didn't want to cross the boundary. I didn't want to have sex. I didn't want to do that for a long period of time because of what had just happened to me with my previous high school sweetheart. He told me that he understood, was very empathetic to the situation in that moment, and we moved forward with, okay, we're just going to date. Long story short, though, there was one day when he, let me go back just a moment, because I speak to this later on in this the video. But what I didn't pick up on or notice was the very controlling behavior, which started from the beginning. So, and I thought in that moment at 17, I thought this was just this guy that was crazy about me, because this other guy whom I thought was crazy about me actually wasn't. So it was kind of like, in a sense, my heart was broken to several pieces here with this individual, but then this guy shows up and just wants to do nothing but just shower me with love and attention and all that. And I saw his controlling nature or behavior in that way, as opposed to seeing it for what it actually was. So what that looked like was picking me up for school in the morning, dropping me off at school. And mind you, I had my own car. But he was very adamant about, being the dutiful boyfriend. I pick you up from school, I drop you off. He did, I remember, make one comment about, because he went to a different high school, wanting everybody to see or know that we were dating, and I should have picked up on that as well. But 17, naive, didn't know. So picked me up from school, took me to work, because I only went to school half a day at this point in time, my senior year, and I was a pharmacy tech. So he took me to work. Picked me up from work, brought me home, would stay at my house, do his homework with me, then would only leave my house when my mother or father would come in the kitchen finally and say, okay, look, you need to go home. And then there were even on some occasions, I could still hear his car going up and down. I lived on a cul-de-sac, going up and down my street at night. Still not really questioning that. in the beginning, I just saw it as this person that just, just really wanted to be around me and love me. Until one day, he picks me up from work and he says, oh, well, I have this surprise for you. And actually on this day, he had actually asked me to get off work a little earlier. So I did that. I asked to get off work early because, a surprise, who doesn't like a surprise? So he picks me up, and then I noticed that he's headed in the direction of his home. And I asked him, it's like, well, where are we going? Where is the surprise? What is it? And he was like, oh, I have to stop by my house and get something first before, we go do whatever it was. And it'll only take a minute. And so I was like, well, okay. So we get to his house, and I know at that time of day, his parents are not at home because they both work. And his mother had been very adamant about the fact that we were not to be at home at his house alone if there wasn't one parent there. And so I was like not getting out of the car. There was that, but then there was also something that was just telling me don't get out of the car, like don't go in the house. So I was using what his mother had told us as like my excuse. So I was like, no, we're not supposed to be in the house alone. Then, what if your mom finds out? We're going to get in trouble, that sort of thing. And I kept saying that over and over. But there was also this other underlying feeling that I just innately had that something was just not right and that I shouldn't go into the house. I did allow him to coerce me into doing so. Eventually, I went in the house, and then he went upstairs to his bedroom, and I stayed downstairs for a while. And then that was a whole conversation. And then coerced me to come upstairs. And then once I got into his bedroom, that's when he started, oh, well, we have some time, and then, just started kissing and groping me. And the whole time I kept saying, no, let's go. We're not supposed to be here. This is not right. We need to leave. But kept, pressing and pressuring me, and, the kissing and the groping and that continued. And then at some point, because I did sit on his bed, and at some point he had gotten me down to the floor. And I really don't remember how that happened. But the more I tried to fight him, so once we moved from the bed to the floor, he was actually on top of me. And the more I talked about, or the more I tried to fight him off, and, we got to go, kept trying to get up and move and things like that, the more he put his body weight on me, until at some point, he just grabbed my arms and put them above my head and was holding my wrist. And then something shifted in my mind, and I was like, this is going in a different direction. From that point, I remember, because I was coming from work, so I had on this floral jacket with this kind of cream color camisole underneath, or tank top, and then this long brown skirt. I had on hose. I had on these eggshell colored loafers, which were actually my favorite pair of shoes because it's my most expensive shoes that I had bought with my money from this job my senior year. And at some point when he became more and more aggressive, and he was holding my wrists, and he was holding them very, very tight, and I started crying and pleading and begging for him to stop, and no, and to stop. And then he ripped my hose off because he had been trying to get my skirt up, and he ripped the hose off and pulled down my underwear and proceeded to rape me. When that happened, I just kind of had this outer body experience. I guess is the best way to explain it. I knew what was happening. I knew it was very wrong. I couldn't stop it. And so what I did with my mind in order to kind of separate myself from what was happening was look up at the sheetrock in the ceiling And I just began making shapes out of the sheetrock in the ceiling, much like this one, to be honest. And just random animal shapes or whatever just came to mind, just to kind of take myself out of that moment. And then when he was finished, he got up, he went to the bathroom, and I just laid there. And I just remember thinking, what just happened? What just happened? What just happened? What just happened? Like, trying to make sense in my mind, like, what just happened? What did he do? What just happened? That was just a running thought in my mind. And I couldn't move. I was just frozen there, clothes still in disarray, underwear down, hose ripped, just laying there. And then he entered the room again, and he just said, "Get up, we have to go." And walked back out of the room. And I remember I was shaking so badly. I could barely like pull up my hose, fix my clothes. I was trying to fix my hair. As I just was thinking in my mind, I have to go outside. I have to go wherever. So I was trying to pull myself together, but my hands were shaking so badly, and I couldn't stop crying. I was starting to hyperventilate, but I kept trying to think to myself, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, just get out of this house, just get out of this house. And then once I got in the car, we were riding in complete silence at first. And then he tried to start random conversation as if nothing had happened. And then I noticed we were going in the direction of my house. And I was like, that finally clicked to me. This whole surprise thing was a whole farce. It was just a whole made up thing to get me to his house alone. And then I finally turned to him and I said, "You raped me. You know what you did? You raped me." I said no. I said that to him. And then he just kind of laughed me off and said, "Well, who are you going to tell? Nobody's going to believe you. It's not like you were a virgin." And he was talking about, or referring back to our original conversation about why I didn't want to have sex in the first place, because of that unfortunate experience I had had with my first love, which just, I don't know, it just took the life out of me, is the best way I can explain it. Like, I felt that whole moment, and then what he followed up and said, it just took the life out of me. So after that incident, what I do remember from the point that I got home was avoiding my family members. I did not want to have any conversation. I didn't want anybody to ask me how was my day or what happened, or ask me anything about him or anything. I didn't want to answer any questions, period. I just wanted to get to my room, which I did. I made a beeline to my room. I remember my mother and father saying something, but I don't remember responding. I just remember, just get to your room, just get to your room, get to your room. And then a lot after that, like what I did right after that, I just felt safe in my room. I remember that, and I felt like if I could, once I got there, I felt safe. Also about that favorite pair of shoes that I had on that day, every time, because I did keep them for a while, I could not wear them. I would look at them and I couldn't wear them. And then what I thought was I could move on, pack up that whole incident and just go to college. Some of the psychological and emotional effects that I've experienced because of sexual assault. PTSD is one. I will say that I have certain triggers. It's been a while, so I'm better at managing them. But I will say early on, for me, things like the touching or holding up my wrist, huge trigger. People behind me, I don't allow people behind me. Whenever I'm in spaces, I have to have my back cannot be to a door. I always have to see people coming in order to observe them, see what, kind of what their agenda is, what they're about. The emotional impact, for a while, I was kind of closed down or shut off. Not really, I had relationships, but would I really get close or invested in those relationships? Would I feel completely, totally trusting of those individuals? No, not for a very long time. Because with both incidences, I was in relationships or dating those individuals that assaulted me. The first thing I changed about myself, which is a direct result of the assault, in both cases, I listened to my intuition. I listened to what my spirit is telling me about people, about situations, about putting myself in certain spaces or positions to where something could occur and I might not be able to escape or defend myself. That is something that I changed purposefully, actually, because prior to, in both of those experiences, I quieted or I didn't listen to or I excused behaviors and didn't listen to my intuition or my gut, which is what most people would say. You do have those feelings, and they let you know about other people, and those feelings are there for a reason. So even in the first situation, my intuition was telling me not to get out of that car and to go into that house, even though I'd been dating that guy and I really didn't understand the controlling nature. I really had no clue as to where this was going to be, might possibly lead to. But in that moment, I do remember just knowing, for whatever reason, I should not get out of the car and go into his house alone. One thing I wish I would have known earlier, I wish that the conversations that, first of all, my parents didn't have a conversation with me about sex or anything like that. So I wish that conversation we would have had, but I also think a caveat to that conversation that every parent should be having with their children is about healthy relationships and what those healthy relationships should look like. So not just the sex intercourse component, which most parents just kind of focus on that. I think young people really need to hear and understand what a healthy relationship should look like. So when I was at 17 encountering those red flags, I would automatically know, oh wow, this is not right. This is something that's unhealthy. Because again, in the beginning, how it showed up with this individual was just controlling. So that's why I would say to every parent out there, do your children a favor, and when you have that sex talk, also have the other piece of that conversation is about healthy relationships. That's something that I would highly recommend, and that I wish I would have known earlier, was what a healthy relationship looks like and what one does not. From a psychological perspective, I would caution everyone out there just to know and understand that people react to trauma in very different ways. That can look like, for one person, it could look like they were the student in class that was, always raising their hand, always focused, always had their assignments done, on time, to a transition to they're always kind of aloof now, not engaged anymore. You might notice, a change in dress or hygiene or tired. What you're going to see a shift and change in behaviors, even personality. They're more of an upbeat, optimistic person, and then they start talking, kind of dark, and it's different for everyone. My experience, what I tried to do was mask it and pack it up in a suitcase and take it to college with me. I thought, out of sight, out of mind. I leave Houston and I move into a different space and everything was going to be okay. Like, it would be like that never happened to me. And you can't do that. So how that showed up for me was the partying, the drinking, engaging in drug use. Again, behaviors that were very uncharacteristic or out of character for me. So really, when you start to notice those sorts of things, then that's when you really need to pay attention, because it's going to look different for everyone. Some people become promiscuous. Some people absolutely shut down, isolate themselves socially from everyone. Again, it can look completely different. Another thing I want to caution people as well, now that I brought up the promiscuity, people label individuals that engage in promiscuous behavior. We need to keep in mind that sometimes that is about sexual assault. And that's what's happening or has happened to that person, especially if you have young people and they're going to be sexually aware much earlier and than the norm. And that's one thing that you can pick up on, but also the promiscuity can be tied to that as well. So I just really caution young people. I hear all kind of terminology thrown around, thoughts and hoes and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes take a beat and think maybe something happened to that person. It's not just a sleeping around. Maybe something has happened or is happening to that individual. From a mother's perspective, because I have a daughter and she's in college right now, she's in third year. I have, because of my experiences, I have always had concerns for my daughter, even to the point where I feel like probably, I don't want to say overly concerned, but I have inundated her with so much information over the years because have always been so fearful of something happening to her. So parents out there, I implore you to have conversations with your child about relationships very, very early on, and being very mindful and astute within those relationships, and pay attention to behaviors of individuals. Always paying attention to knowing your surroundings and the spaces that you are in. I always am having that conversation with my daughter as well, because she has a tendency just to go from point A to point Z and not really look around and pay attention. And I am always, telling her to be very mindful of that. Most cases of sexual assault actually happen with people that we already know. Doesn't randomly happen, but there are cases to where that does happen. So you do need to be mindful of your surroundings, the space that you're in. Across campus, you got a night class, not walking from that night class alone, having some sort of buddy system in place, whether it's just random classmates that you're in the class with. Hey, what dorm are you going to, or what apartments are you going to, and hey, can we walk together the majority of the way? You don't have to know them personally, but just, there's strength in numbers. So make sure that you're, in a group of people, and also to have conversations, to find someone that you can confide in, to talk to, build a support system however you can. I know I've had a lot of young people talk to me about the way society is now, it's really not conducive to very close relationships, because they're like, a lot of our communication is via technology. So, you know, but within that technology, you can still make a connection with somebody that you know, or you at least feel like, you know, they will listen. And if some action needs to be taken, you know, they can either hold your hand through it, or they will be the person that will step up and say, hey, you know, I'm going to stand up for you because you don't feel strong enough to speak in this moment. Let me do that for you. Another thing I'd like to add to this conversation in regards to sexual assault is generationally how we have dealt with this this problem, this very pervasive problem of sexual harassment and sexual assault. So many times, and oftentimes, it's been swept under the rug. People don't talk about it. You know it's happened to this individual in your family, or you know it's happened because of this individual in your family, and they have been the predator or perpetrator in this situation with a couple of individuals in the family. But generationally, people have been taught, I can even think of, for instance, my grandmother dealing with mental health issues, and what was told to me was, oh, she just had a mental breakdown. No one could clearly define it. No one wanted to talk about it. Everyone wanted to act like, you know, pretend like it didn't happen. But when a person is sitting on a random neighbor's porch talking to themselves, that's an issue that should be talked about. We see this happen with mental health. We see this happen with sexual assault, with rape, with child abuse, with pedophiles, within families. People just don't talk about it. I'm Shana Williams, and I'm 100% certain that I believe survivors.